Mm-hmm. What is up? What is up? Going live. How's it going, guys? It's Tyler with Hooksets Are Free. It's about 8:30 p.m. here on Thursday night, February 24th. Hope you guys are having a good one. Whenever it is that you're watching this video, whether it is day, night, or live, perhaps. I'm not sure how many people we're going to get in here to join for this live stream because it is a little impromptu. But I did manage to get the remainder of the recent package that I picked up from Cabela's, which I opened on my last live stream last weekend, and so I just wanted to show you the last two things that are in here, talk about these items, and and then maybe just chat for a little bit longer. Not gonna hang out for a super long time tonight. My wife is not working, so I'll probably head back up and hang out with her when this is all over. But thought I would jump on with you guys, have a drink, talk about some fishing, and then keep going about our business. I'm not going to be on the next couple of nights because I've got a boys' weekend up in the mountains, little fishing, or I wish it were fishing, but skiing slash poker trip. So yeah, looking forward to that. But I will not be on tomorrow or Saturday night. So hope you guys are doing well. Grayson and Abe already in the house, in the chat. How are you guys doing tonight, man? I am doing well. Thank you, Grayson. Little spicy. Drinking that same single barrel rye from Stellum that I had last week. That yeah, it's like a 116 proof, and I'm drinking it neat right now. So that first sip just bit back pretty hard. What's up, Ryan? How you doing, man? Have you gone on those ice fishing trips or not? I saw you left a comment on one of my most recent live streams, and I know you said you were going on the hunt for some trophy lake trout at some new lakes near you. So, have you done that yet? And if not, are you looking forward to it? If you did, how did it go, man? Tell us. Guggen Slayer in the house. Matthew Acevedo in here as well. What's up, dudes? Good to see you guys. One thing that came in the mail today, which is weird, I told you guys like a month ago when I got my package from Tackle Warehouse that this was missing. I guess somehow, some way, this T-shirt was back ordered. You guys saw me get a hat from that order. I don't know if this was maybe it was like a 25 days of Christmas type of sale. So I would have gotten the package over a month ago, but they did not include the shirt, and I was wondering why. And I guess it was because somehow, some way, when they packaged it up and sent it to me, that it was back ordered. So just a little black Tackle Warehouse T-shirt, nothing super special. I don't know if I actually had black prior to now, but at this point, I've got a couple of these Tackle Warehouse T-shirts. You guys know how much money you got to spend in order to get a free T-shirt. But yeah, that was part of my purchase a while back. So just got that, and then I did stop by Cabela's today because I got a notification that the rest of my order came in the other day. And if you guys were watching last week, you would know that it's really just two things that are in this package. So the box looks a little bit more like there should be a bunch of things in here, but there's not. And it is what it is. Guggen Slayer says lakes had almost thawed, but then getting 6 inches tonight. Yeah, that's brutal. Sorry to hear that, man. Ryan says I am super excited. Just got some 2-ounce tube jig heads and 6-inch tubes. Good Lord. Gonna go use a 3/4 ounce underspin and 6-inch swim baits. Right on. That sounds like a whole lot of fun. Catching lake trout, big fish on big baits. Sweet, man. Well, good luck. I'm excited for you. Feeling a little bit jealous at the moment, but at the same time, the mountains got like 9 inches of powder last night, and skiing should be good this weekend. So I'm looking forward to that myself. But we're not here to talk about skiing. We're here to talk about fishing. So Ryan says the lake that we're fishing is about a 12-hour drive. It's in the next province and quite far north. Dang. Well, that sounds like a far drive, but I hope that it's worth it. It sounds like what you might potentially catch could make it well worth it. So I wish you the best of luck on the water, man. On the ice, water, frozen water, whatever you want to call it. Matt says, I went fishing yesterday, got skunked, but it was drained out. So really shallow. But tomorrow I'm picking the kayak up. Well, sweet, man. At least you're out fishing, right? At least you've got open water and the possibility of catching fish. I am going to be without that for at least another month. You know, we did just get it's been a super cold last few days. It's currently single digits outside right now. And yeah, it's been frigid cold, dropping down into the negatives at night the last couple nights. Very cold. So I would think we've got at least another few weeks, upwards of 6 weeks, but hopefully it's more in that like 4 weeks until I have fishable water, but we'll have to see about that. Yeah, Ryan, Matt's fishing for lake trout. 36 to 40 inches of ice where Ryan is, way up north in Saskatchewan. He's going for trophy lake trout. So, guys, I've got two things in this package from Cabela's. I don't know if you can see what's in there, but you guys already know that one of these is just another color of the Rapala OG Tiny 4. You guys saw me open up, about a half a dozen colors of this guy on the last live stream that I did last weekend. And there was one more color that was not included in that, I guess just due to availability, because Cabela's will ship to your store for free or to your house for a standard shipping cost. So since I've got a Cabela's really close to home for me, I figured I might as well take advantage of that free shipping and go pick up from the store. So that's what I did. But unfortunately, that led to, some of these things coming together and some of the others coming in a separate package. So this color here is called Green Gizzard Shad. And this is a classic color pattern that I have now in multiple baits from multiple lure manufacturers. I say classic, but somehow it's still kind of like a newer color pattern. And here from Rapala, this is a little bit lighter of a green gizzard shad. You get that very subtle greenish silverback. You get that pearl side that has some green iridescence on it. I don't think you're going to be able to see in this light right now, but it does definitely like flash some green on the side, especially from the right angle. And I wish I could show you, but it's not going to show up in this harsh light that's right behind my webcam. But either way, the OG Tiny 4 is a bait that I am super excited to throw here as soon as the ice thaws and we have an opportunity to go fishing. This very narrow profile body and small profile in a flat-sided crankbait that is a shallow diver is one that I'm very excited about. I don't think I'm going to change out the stock hooks on these because it does look a little bit more like these are appropriately sized to the bait compared to, say, the OG Slim 6, which I've talked about before and I think has slightly oversized hooks for the bait. I could show you that right now if you want, but this OG Tiny 4 is probably going to immediately jump ahead on my list of favorite flat-sided crankbaits. Jump ahead of this Slim 6, which I have liked, but just not quite put as much time into as I thought I would. You can see from the line tag here that I have thrown this Slim 6 in this green gizzard shad color. I fish a couple of lakes with gizzard shad in them, so this color pattern is a good one for sure. But you can see the size of these hooks relative to this bait, pretty big, honestly. Not big enough to where they foul up and tangle on each other by any means, but what I've talked about is the fact that these hooks are a hybrid style hook, so not quite an EWG, but also not a round bend. And because they're fairly large for the size of the bait, I find that this bait gets hung up more than necessary or more than appropriate, in my opinion. So, I haven't gone out of my way to change the hooks on these because they are sticky, but I think they probably ought to be sized down just a little bit on this bait to, maybe a size 6 or so, something closer to the same size hook that is on the Tiny 4. But either way, that Tiny 4 is a bait that I'm pumped about. So, even though a couple of these baits haven't been fished by me, if you ask me right now what my favorite top 3 flat-sided cranks are, I would probably tell you that they are the Evergreen Flat Force 4. Little bit bigger, more standard size profile on this bait. The new Rapala OG Tiny 4. And the Berkeley Flatside in the 5 Junior size. So the 5 Junior and the Tiny 4 are really small bodied flat side crankbaits. These guys are both in the ballpark of a 1/4 ounce. I think the Tiny 4 is a 1/4 and the 5 Junior is like a 1/5 ounce. So, bordering on spinning rod territory, or if you've got your bait casting gear dialed in, you can throw those things without any issue. But really, the Flat Force is more of like your traditional 3/8 ounce and like 2.5-inch size. Still got a very flat body, and love that circuit board lip that's rounded. So yeah, I think I'm going to be excited. I mean, I'm almost certain that I'm going to fall in love with the Tiny 4 the second that I get out. So Guggenslayer says that thing looks good for the classic. Yeah, blueback. For sure. I hear you, man. Adam says, what colors do you suggest for super dark, muddy water? Colors of what? I mean, as a general rule of thumb, whether you're talking about crankbaits or you're talking about soft plastics, the most obvious thing to do is to throw bright colors so that it's going to stand out and the fish will be able to see it and react to it most easily. So we're talking like a chartreuse black back, something along those lines. Chartreuse blue back are great color patterns to throw in dirty water. Reds are great to throw. So, there's your classic chartreuse black back. Something like a mossy chartreuse craw is a good option if you're throwing crankbaits. But then just as quickly, whether you're throwing hard baits or soft plastics, you should go to bold and dark colors. Okay, so here I've got a 6 cents Cloud 9 C6. We talked about this bait on either my last live stream or the one before it. This color pattern is awesome, made by 6 cents. So black and blue, you don't really see in a crankbait all that frequently, but black and blue in soft plastics is super common. Something like red bug or June bug, something that is darker and is going to create more of a silhouette so that it stands out in the water without just immediately being gaudy and bright is a good move as well, Adam. So, um, yeah, if you've got muddy water, you want to go with bright or you want to go with dark, but not the natural colors. You don't want to be throwing as much of green pumpkin. Um, you don't want to be throwing muted colors really quite as much. So solid dark colors or bright colors. And the bright colors can be quite a bit more, eccentric if you want. Like this 6 Sense Curve 55 in this like lava truce color that they make. Great in dirty water. Or something like this straight red color. Most people would assume or associate this with a pre-spawn bite, but it doesn't just have to be pre-spawn. Dark water is where something like that will really excel. So fire crawl in a chatterbait, or like I forget what they call this new color. This is the big blade chatterbait. But this guy right here with the orange blade and that chartreuse and white with an orange on the belly, great dirty watercolor for sure. Matt says, Tyler, what's your starting color cranks when it's still really cold? Are you just using red mainly in the pre-spawn? So I use a lot of red in the pre-spawn, but no, I also use a lot of natural shad patterns. So especially when it's really cold, I will throw natural shad patterns, whether it is like a straight white or a little bit more of like a natural, slightly more subdued, like this oyster color from Strike King. I throw this color in their red eye shad pretty frequently. And then, like I just showed you, like that green gizzard color, I throw a lot of like gizzard shad patterns, things like that. So, um, when it's early, like really cold, I find that something just a little bit more natural, especially when I'm imitating shad, does better. And then as the pre-spawn starts to heat up, so maybe a few weeks into the season, which for me, the water temps are still going to be in the 40s for sure, like low to mid 40s. But then from there all the way through the mid 50s, I'm throwing mostly red. And then as bass are moving up super shallow and getting closer to the spawn, then I will start playing around a little bit and going with brighter colors or going with bluegill profiles, depending on the clarity of the water and where I'm fishing. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit. Ryan uses a 45-inch heavy power rod for ice fishing and a 3000 size Shimano CI4 reel. That is a beefed up ice fishing combo, but I'm sure that's kind of what you need for fighting giant lake trout through the ice. That sounds absolutely awesome. All right, guys. So the one and only other thing in here that I want to show you, and could be a talking point for a little while, or it could be a talking point for just a minute or two. Doesn't quite matter to me, but I decided to pick up a pack of the old, and it's not old at all, it's new, but somewhat controversial, Berkeley Powerbait Ghillie. Okay. So, designed by Mike Iaconelli, or Ike, whatever you like to call him. This was released at ICAST last year and won Best in Show, even though, technically speaking, it's not a new concept. It's new to the U.S. market, but is really a knockoff of an existing bait from Japan. This kind of thing happens all the time in the industry, so a lot of people got worked up about it because it is essentially a direct copy of the Issei gill flat. The way that this bait is segmented and moves, um, a lot of the design features about this bait are the same, but that bait was not readily available on the market, and so most people didn't know about it until this bait came out, and a lot of people called it out for being a knockoff. Then everybody came out of the woodwork to say, "Oh, Berkeley's just ripping everybody off." Regardless of what it is, this is a bait that is now on the US market, more readily available, will certainly become a lot more readily available either after COVID or once the novelty of this thing dies down a little bit, because these are still hard to get your hands on. These are made in 3 sizes and like a dozen different colors. Quite frankly, I was only able to, I think this was the only size and color available at Cabela's at the time of me purchasing the OG Tiny 4s. So I just decided, what the heck? This is something that I could throw around the spawn. Um, Even though it's black and blue, I think it'll do pretty well at imitating a bluegill. And that is exactly what this bait is. It's called the Ghillie. This is the smallest of 3 sizes that they make. So this is a, I want to say 3.5 inch, the 90 millimeters. So yeah, right at about 3.5 inch. They make a 90, a 110, and a 130. This bait at the 90 millimeter size comes with 4 in a pack. And it goes down from there. You get 3 in the 110 and 2 in the 130. And these are not super cheap. I want to say these are like $8 or $9 a pack. So at $9 a pack, I'm spending $2, $2.25 per bait on these. So fairly expensive, even a little bit more expensive than like the Geek Crack Bellows Gill. But you do get some more realism and a little bit more versatility out of this bait. And I'm curious to give it a try. So obviously you notice a couple things straight out of the package. You see how the plastic running down the spine is super thin, because it's got all of these, I don't even know what to call them. They're not ribs. They're just like these balls sticking off, which allows this bait to be very flexible. And so it has a very, very natural swimming action. You can see it's got these, um, I don't want to call them wings. What do you call them? Fins off the side for stability, and then off of the tail for stability as well. So this thing is supposed to swim true straight in the water. Now, it is meant to be rigged sideways. Okay, I wish I had the right kind of hook to put on this thing. What hook did I use recently? I just rigged a bait for you guys not long ago. Oh, I rigged it on this, but I don't know where I put the hook. So I kind of want to rig this for you guys right now, but I also don't necessarily have the right hook. I can find it. All right. Let's try to find the right hook, which might be a little challenging because really I need a screw lock hook. And I don't have one sitting here, so oh well. I think these are a 1/0 all-purpose hook by Owner. This is not a screw lock, so I will most likely use a screw lock when rigging this thing. moving forward. But let's just line this up so we can see that size-wise, it's about right. Okay. So again, I think this is a 1/0 hook on this guy. And I'm going to show you how to rig it. Before I do, I will show you right now that this bait actually, and I did not know this until I'm holding this bait in my hand, but it has a hollow body. Now, it is solid up top and hollow down below. Or is it supposed to be rigged the other way? Is it supposed to be hollow up top? I think so, because of the way that the eyes are. So that is part of what allows this bait to swim properly, is that it's got a hollow cavity in the top half of the head section of the bait, which is really cool. I did not realize that. That's not something that people talk about. So you're going to rig this thing Texas rigged through the side of the bait, not through the bottom and up through the top. Though I think theoretically you could. You'd need a much wider gap hook to do so. And so I don't think that's the way that this bait was designed to work. So we're going to rig it the most typical way that people will use this bait. Although it's not the only way to rig it, okay? So what we're going to do is come in the nose and out the side just below the eye. Or I should say next to the eye. Going to thread that hook up on there and into the nose of the soft plastic. You're going to line this up, and essentially it's going to come out just where the thin part of the bait starts. So you can see there, just where the bait starts, we're going to push through, and it's going to pop through there. I might have left a little bit too much, so what I'll do is actually back out and come back through in a slightly different spot. This part of the bait is very thin, so it's acting a little funny on me, but then I will just expose this, and then what we're left with is this right here. So it looks like it should swim like this, but believe it or not, it will actually swim like this with the hook on the side of the bait. So interesting design, because the top section is hollow. This thing will swim like so. And I'm excited to see how it actually works, but that is how it's designed to work. Definitely seems interesting. Although, another way that you can rig this thing is on a drop shot. Just nose hook it. The whole nose is solid. So, literally, this hollow pocket doesn't start until right here. And it's just this upper section right here that is hollow. This whole bottom is solid, and the whole nose is solid. So, you can nose hook it and fish it on a drop shot, and it'll make a killer little bait, especially this smaller 90 size. I can see being a great bed fishing bait or drop shot bait for when smallies and or largies are feeding on tiny bluegill. So I'm pretty excited to give it a shot. I don't necessarily foresee myself using this bait a ton, but I do want to give it a fair shake. So this is the Berkeley Powerbait Ghillie, again in the smallest size and in the black and blue color. Probably not what I would have chosen to get as my first choice if everything was available, but there's next to nothing available right now. So that's what we're working with, and I just wanted to see what it was about, be able to check them out in person, put my hands on them, and I've learned a couple things just by holding it, observing it. It's got that classic power bait stink. It has a very thin pliable design to it that is totally unique to anything else out on the market aside from maybe what they copied. But yeah, it's very cool the way that it's ribbed and has a super thin body. Um, so it's gonna have an awesome swimming action through the water, and I'm curious to try it. So let's see what you guys are saying about it. Guggen Slayer off topic says, "I wonder what the secret hard bait will be at the classic this year." That's a great question. Makes you wonder: is it going to be something that's new, or is it going to be something that is old or is tried and true? But what's going to be the bait that catches them, and who's going to win? Matt says, Tyler, did you see those new KBD Elite Jerkbaits? They're $14.99. No, I did not. Interesting. KBD Elite Jerkbaits by Strike King, I assume. I have not seen them. No. $14.99. The perch pattern is awesome, but wondering why it's so expensive. I would wonder the same thing, but maybe they just figure since Berkeley can get away with putting out a $15 jerkbait, then Strike King can too. And maybe there's some validity to that. Maybe people will buy it. But what makes it so much better than the original KVD jerkbaits? I have no idea. In fact, I don't even know what bait you're talking about. So I need to figure it out. I need to do some research and look into that, see what the deal is. But Grayson, hopefully I answered your question by just showing you how to rig those gillies, man. Matt says, yeah, it's the same as the Issei. Yeah, it is the same bait. But again, this was made for the US market, made for the mass market, not a tiny company that's really not making their stuff available in the US. Most people can't get a hold of the Issei gill flat, and they're expensive too. So good on Berkeley for making a bait that will be available on the mass market. Oh, you're saying the air pocket is the same. Interesting. I had no idea about the air pocket in either one, to be honest. Dennis says, have you seen the dancing bone doctor bait by Kasumi? I've seen it for sure. I know that Ron Hawley has some. I know that Matt talked about them, just a couple weeks ago. I've seen them. They look a little bit too wild for my taste. I just don't know exactly where I would use it. It seems very segmented, and I don't know. It's a funky looking creature bait for sure. Pretty weird, but interesting nonetheless. So my guess is it would get torn up, or the portions of the bait would get bitten off very easily. And I could be wrong about that. Maybe it's more durable, but my assumption is no, because it's a JDM bait. So it's probably got a pretty soft type of plastic in it. I don't know about the salt content, but looks interesting. Just a little too funky for me. I don't know exactly how that thing's supposed to be rigged. Looks like it could be a free rig bait. Looks like it could be maybe a jig trailer or just like a round ball jig type of bait. I have no idea what that thing is even really designed to do. Matt says, I didn't know that they sold power bait scent in a bottle until the other day. Well, that is funny. You should laugh out loud because, yeah, dude, they've been selling it for a while. In fact, we talked about that not long ago when people were asking if the Max scent is available by itself. And I said no, but I think it's only a matter of time until they do because the original Powerbait scent and the Gulp scent are available to purchase in bottles. And so I think maybe in a few years from now, when all the craze dies down a little bit and production catches up with demand with the Max scent baits, then at that point they'll probably sell the Max scent, not the formula, but the scent in a bottle. At least I hope they do. Matt says the Kasumi Dancing Bone Doctors have a pretty tough plastic. Interesting. Adam, for the ghillie, for that small 90 size, yes, a 1/0 is the proper size. In the 110, I would step up to a 3/0, maybe a 4/0, but probably 3, given the way that bait is designed. And really, it's just half of the bait that you're going to rig into. So I would say 3/0, and then probably stepping up to a 5/0 with that 130 size. Robin says on those $14.99 jerk baits, better hooks on them. That's it, dude. I mean, that doesn't seem worth it. Aren't the standard KVD jerk baits like $8, $9? I mean, that doesn't seem to make sense. I mean, maybe you should be paying upwards of $1 per hook. So at most, if it's the same bait but with better hooks, they could charge $11.99. Not $14.99. That sounds crazy. So Matt says Kasumi's plastic is almost like a saltwater blend. Super tough. Huh. Well, I imagine that it's kind of like the best of both worlds, where you get a tough plastic, but because of all of those segments and the way that the bait is designed with like it's just cut out like a craft project from art class, that then you get a little bit more wild of an action and float in the water despite a really tough plastic. Ordinarily, you would associate a tough plastic with less action, but when you get all those segments and ribs, you automatically get more action. So maybe it kind of bridges the gap and gives you the best of both worlds. But that sounds pretty cool, man. And Matt says he thinks that the jerkbait looks like it comes from a different mold and is not the same as the KVD jerkbait. So again, I need to do my own research and check out, see what that bait is about. But haven't been taking a peek. I've been super busy with work this week and just I haven't caught wind of that. So interesting. Dennis, I think Matt has a couple packs, not his friend. And I don't know that he's used them just yet, but he owns them. He's gotten his hands on them for sure. So guys, we've been in here for 37 minutes, 38 minutes, and I don't want to stay on for more than another like 15, 20 minutes or so. Ideally, unless conversation is flowing and we're having a great time. But I mostly hopped on to just show you those two baits since I picked them up from Cabela's that was rounding out the order. But I've got a little bit, half of my whiskey left. What do you guys want to talk about? Do you have any questions um, or anything in particular that you want to talk about? Doesn't have to be questions for me. Just something on your mind. Anything in particular in terms of direction that you want to take this live stream with, or you tell me. There's 15 people in here, so we can sign up at any point. But I'm also happy to hang out for a little while. So you guys tell me. And it sometimes gets a little distracting because I've got so many dang baits sitting in front of me, and I do still need to clean up. I've gone out of my way to like organize some things. Like I showed you, my Flatside box is now filling up. I've got my KVD 1.5 flats up top. I've got my Berkeley Flatside 9s and 7s. I've got my 6-cents Crush flat 75s and a couple like Storm Arashis over here. I've got my 13 Fishing Flat Daddies and my Strike King Chick Magnets. I've got my OG Slims in the 6, OG Tiny 4s, and my Berkeley Flatside 5 Juniors, and then my Evergreen Flat Force 4s. And that mostly fills a 3,700 size box, but pretty excited about that box rounding itself out. So there might be a few baits that I need to throw in there that are just out and about, but I'm starting to get more organized. So we'll see how that comes along. Guggen Slayer says time has slowed down now that spring is close. Well, I hear you there. Um, it's tempting. It feels like it's right around the corner, and yet it also feels so far away. So I can totally relate to that feeling. I get what you're going through, man. Matt says top 3 rattle traps or lipless baits. Good question, man. All right. Where are my rattle baits, dude? Jerk baits, poppers, square bills. Where did I put my traps? Have we been talking about traps recently? Because there might be 1 or 2 in that box specifically that I want to talk about. And it seems to have vanished on me at the moment. I didn't check on the other side. Shatter apps, medium divers, balsa. Bang. There's my traps. All right. So here's a lot of my traps. Maybe 75 of them or so. But as you guys know, this does not include my Lucky Craft or Jackal lipless cranks, which I've got in this guy right here. So you guys know that the LV 500 and the Jackal TN70 are awesome baits, and they're up there as baits that I like a lot, but just I don't throw all the time because I do feel like they're a little bit more specific to deep water fishing, and they're pretty aggressive baits. So meant for a technique within the category of lipless crankbaits, meant to rip up off the bottom in slightly deeper water. So I will mention that the Striking Red Eye Shad is definitely one of my top 3s. Something like the Rayburn red color is an awesome one to have. This is the standard, and this is the 2-tap. And I like the Red Eye Shad for a few reasons. Of course, I do upgrade the hooks, so you can see that this one has 2 Mustad triple grips on it. One is red up front. These are both, I think, a size 4. I think I prefer a size 4 on the Red Eye Shad. Could even be a 2 on these and a 4 on this one. But regardless, the Red Eye Shad is a bait that, for a 1/2 ounce lipless crankbait, it fishes pretty well on a quick retrieve and up more shallow in the water column. So I find that on a straight retrieve, as well as a bait that you might want to control the depth as you let this thing fall. It shimmies on the fall really well, and then it swims pretty well on a straight retrieve, and it stays up. And so I like the action. of a striking red eye shad quite a lot, and I have for years. I've got probably 20 of them. And I've got them in all three sizes, really. You know, I like them. Maybe they make them in 4 sizes, but I like them in the smaller 1/4 ounce size. This green tomato color is one of my favorites. But 1/4 ounce, the standard half, and then they do make a larger 3/4 ounce size as well. It has a little bit different of a sound profile. It's tough to say after that, but one that I do feel a little bit obligated to mention because I've liked it for a while, and I don't think it quite gets enough love, even though most people who know about it recognize it as a really good lipless crankbait, is the Spro Aruku shad. So I'm looking for it in a different size or different color pattern, because that's one of the bigger sizes. So here's like a standard 1/2 ounce in more of like a ghost minnow pattern. And this guy is an awesome bait that noses down. So it will swim a little bit more nose down than the red eye shad will. And at rest, this thing will stand with its tail up. Like so. You can see that weighting in the nose, or at least I can see it really well. There you go. And so this is a bait that noses down really well, swims at a 45 or even a little steeper than that. So it swims pretty weedlessly and is a very good and somewhat underrated lipless crankbait, and one that that I like quite a lot. One other that I'll mention, it's not way off the wall, but is worth mentioning because kind of like the Aruku shad, it's a very high quality bait, and it's a good value bait. And this is the Yozuri Rattle and Vibe. Okay. The reason that I like this bait is that it has that flat top, deflects pretty well, but it has a little bit more deep of a rattle sound, and this thing is heavier for its size than most other baits in the category. So the 1/4 ounce size weighs 3/8. This 1/2 ounce size weighs 5/8. And it comes in some really cool color patterns. And it's like less than $10. So those would be 3 that I would mention that are up there on my list. Of course, something like a Bill Lewis rattle trap and a Cotton Cordell Super Spot are up there. Great baits for fishing quick in shallow water, but I tend to find myself throwing a red eye shad in those situations just as much. And then when fishing deep, I will throw that Aruku shad along with the LV500 and the Jackal TN70. But if we're talking about baits that I'm excited to throw, you guys already know that the Lucky Craft LV150 and the Jackal TN60 are baits that I'm very excited to throw this year because they are downsized baits of what I talked about in the LV500 and the TN70. So not necessarily baits that need to be thrown for that technique that is closest to the bottom, ripping up, letting fall back down, rest, nose down, tail up, and just kind of a yo-yo, but letting settle down to the bottom or close to it. So, yeah. Long answer to your question, but sorry about that. Nick says, Nick Rodriguez, what's up, dude? I don't think I recognize your name, but you say, have you tried ZMan Red Hot Craws on a Ned rig? to get a jump on the pre-spawn? Red hot craws. I don't know exactly what bait you're talking about, but the Heights hot craw is a color. The TRD Cross is a bait. Is this my Ned Rig box? Might be. So here's the ZMan TRD Cross. Ignore the fact that this says the deal, because I've actually put like 3 or 4 different colors in this package. There's 2 baits each. This color here is called Heights Hot Craw. Green pumpkin back, red belly. There's that TRD Cross in the Heights Hot Craw. You certainly can throw that bait, but when you say to get a jump on the pre-spawn, no. When I think about the pre-spawn, I am thinking about throwing moving baits and trying to find aggressive fish that are feeding up. So I'm going to throw slow moving presentations like the Ned Rig, like finesse jigs with something like this TRD Cross a little bit later when, say, we're getting closer to the spawn or in the post spawn, and then of course in the summer as well, but usually not as much in the pre-spawn or early in the pre-spawn. Of course, there's a time and a place where it can be effective, where you know that fish are already staging. That can be a good option. One bait that I did not have on me or did not show you before is the ZMan Baby Goat in the Fire Craw color. I think this would have been perhaps a better match to throw on this what do they even call this bait? This is the Mini Max chatterbait. I can rig this one up for you guys as I'm answering the next question, because I think it's going to be an even better pairing than this tiny little Kitech Crazy Flapper. It's only a 2.8. Now, I know the Baby Goat is technically only a 3-inch bait, but I'm going to check to see how much better this thing looks, because the profile is a little bit different. And I understand that I might still need to trim the skirt down a hair on this Mini Max chatterbait, but we'll see about that. Guggen Slayer says, how or do you make day boxes? Yes, of course I do. When you have as much tackle as I do, and as most of you probably do, you have to make day boxes. It doesn't make a lot of sense to bring, a jerkbait box with over $1,000 worth of jerkbaits in it to use for one day, when odds are you're only going to use maybe 5 different jerkbaits. So I always make day boxes, usually the night before or the day of when I'm going fishing. And it completely depends on the body of water, the type of forage that's in there, and at least to my knowledge, what the clarity of water has been as of late. But ordinarily, I like to build them with 3,600 size boxes. And I'll show you 1 or 2 that I've got sitting over here. That pairing is better. I like it right away. Okay, so these aren't current day boxes, obviously. I mean, I'm not going fishing right now. I haven't gone fishing in a while, but I find that a 3,600 size box, like this is a flambeau 3,600, fits really well in a backpack and leaves room for other things. So I can bring 2 or 3 of these, no problem. And you'll see in this little 3600 size box, right now, I'm not even close to filling it. I could fit 3 times as much tackle in here. And right now, you know, in the bottom of 4 trays, I've got a spook, a wake bait, and a small square bill. I've got a balsa square bill from Bagley. I've got a Rapala DT4 and a Rapala BX Brat. I've got a LV500 and a Strike King Red Eye Shad. I've got a homemade Jika rig and a hair jig. I've got a baby bull shad and a rattling 1.5 square bill. So obviously this was a box that I was throwing, you know, relatively late in the fall, but I like the size of those 3600 size boxes because they're small enough to fit really well into a day bag, but not too small to where you can't fit most baits in them. I would say once you get to say the size of like a medium-sized swim bait or an oversized square bill, something like that, then you're going to struggle to fit baits in those individual, you know, sections of the box. But the other box that I really like is this one by Plano, and this has 4 sections and then a big open section. So, you know, you'll see right now that this is a box where I store jointed swim baits that are a little bit middle of the road for me. So I've got the BX minnows from Rapala in a couple different sizes and a few colors of each in the big section. And then I've got the baby bull gills and the bull shads. Sorry, baby bull shads. In the rest of this section, and I actually do have 2 of the little Guggen Squad Contender Juniors. I only threw this like 1 or 2 times this past season, and I didn't like it all that much, but I am gonna maybe throw it a couple more times to see if maybe that was just a fluke or there's a better way to fish it, but not a big fan. But either way, 3600 size boxes are what I use to build day boxes, and that way I can still jam one of these full with maybe 50 lures or so and have plenty. I'll fill a couple of those things up to bring with me and then bring a whole bunch of soft plastics and maybe some terminal tackle. I do like to store my terminal tackle in these little flambeau boxes. So like I've got one here that's some drop shot weights and some homemade Jika rigs. I've got one of these that's dedicated to drop shot. I've got one of these that's dedicated to Ned rig heads. Pretty much every technique that you could think of, I like to have one of these boxes that I will jam full. So depending on what I'm planning on doing, I will bring a couple of these terminal boxes. Doesn't take up a lot of room. And then bring a bunch of soft plastics as well. And that pretty much handles what I bring for the day, where I'm going. Hopefully that answers your question, Guggen Slayer. Sorry to be a little lengthy with the answer. Matt says, not much. A while ago, I think, why does no one talks about the Project Z weedless chatterbait, but then talk about the cross eyes? You know, that's a good question. I think it's perhaps because people didn't love the way that the Project Z weedless swam. It's definitely different, right? And the weed guard is different too. So the weedless Project Z has a standard brush guard on it that is made from, you know, like monofilament. But it rides different in the water column. I don't know if I'm going to get all these out for you, right? Whatever. All right. So here's the Project Z weedless. Has a standard weed guard on it. This one's been pushed down, so of course you can adjust it how you like it. You can spread that thing out, you can bend it up, you can bend it down, you can cut it off, whatever. Fishes pretty well, like a swim jig. Wow, this hook looks bent. Maybe because I caught a few fish on it, but look at, doesn't that hook look a little bit bent to you guys? Regardless, what is to note about the Project Z is that it rides higher in the water column and it almost swims at an angle like this, like it's wanting to swim to the surface. So it doesn't ride horizontally, it rides like this, which is just a little bit unnatural. But I've gotten bit really well on this bait. And I find that it's really good in grass that has grown way up. So where you're dealing with skinny water and you're ripping up out of grass, this thing does well. The weed guard helps prevent grass, and so where you don't have to rip this thing quite as much as you would with a standard chatterbait in order to get the grass off of it. So instead of letting it sink down in the grass and then ripping it up out, you're just fishing on top of the grass. And at least that's been my experience and how I've had the most success on it. Whereas the project, or say the cross-eyes chatterbait is a little bit different of a design. So this thing has more rounded of a head, like a flippin' jig, and a different style weed guard on it that is much more firm. Of course, you can bend this thing out or up or down, but what you'll find is that with a lot more tension, it is harder for me to get snagged. This thing is meant to be fished like a jig than like a swim jig. So more meant for fishing in and around cover, like laydowns and such, than around grass where a traditional swim jig or chatterbait would excel. So I think that's the main difference in why people felt like the cross eyes was more of a game changer than the weedless Project Z. It's not just the weed guard, but it's the shape of the head and the way that the bait fishes and swims in the water column. But it could just be me. That's my opinion, though, man. Adam says, I ordered a trolling motor today for the boat. Couldn't believe the prices or how much technology they have in them. Can't wait to get off the bank and on the water. Right on, dude. I bet you will be happy for sure. Totally different experience. Robin, I understand you probably asked this question a long time ago, but you say, how important is red colored crankbaits in the early spring? How important is it? Not all that important. But if you throw red, are you going to do better? Yes. So it's relative. You can catch fish on stuff that's not red. I mean, it's not the be all end all, but there's just something about red that triggers fish more in the pre-spawn. People have a couple different associations about the color red with bass. And, I think in all times except for the pre-spawn, there's this notion that red is more of like a target for bass to hit. But in the spring, crawfish are red, water is muddy. Red is definitely just an overall good color all around. And I showed you guys that green tomato color from Strike King that is half yellow, half red. That one has done really well for me. And so part of it's a confidence thing, but part of it is a visibility thing and what you're imitating. I've told you guys before that all in all, I've had a little bit more success long term throughout the pre-spawn on something a little bit more natural with red, like the Heights Hot Craw from Z-Man, the Jackhammer Chatterbait, than say the Fire Craw, also in the Jackhammer Chatterbait. So two different red patterns. One is green on top versus red, and red on bottom versus orange on bottom. This one's going to be much better in muddy water and, in my opinion, early in the pre-spawn to where they start getting more aggressive. And this guy is going to be better all throughout the pre-spawn, from the coldest all the way up to and through the spawn. So a little bit more versatility in like natural red hues, but in general, with dirty water, when trying to imitate a crawfish, red will help you out. Guggen says the Aruku sleeper. Wow, I must be way behind on comments. Let me try and see where we're at. I'm so sorry about this, guys. I didn't realize how far down I am. I just saw Ryan say, "Have a good night, everyone." All right. Matt says, "Isn't the Booyah one knocker very similar to the Excalibur lipless or an exact copy of it?" Yes, very similar, if not exactly the same. Exact copy, I don't know about that, but my understanding is that Booyah is the same company. Like, they bought out Excalibur, and so it might even be the exact same mold, not a copy, but maybe the same mold. But yes, it's. I think Jason Christie just put out something not long ago saying that it's the same bait. I think maybe he cut one open and showed people that the internals of those two baits are exactly the same. Abe says, "What speed do you reel at in the spring? Burn it or slow it down?" So that totally depends on what time of the spring it is and what bait I'm using. Are we talking about lipless crankbaits? Or are we talking about lures in general? Because I find that varying your retrieve makes a huge difference. As say with a chatterbait, I find that a medium fast retrieve with an occasional stop and then a speed up of the reel makes a big difference in getting reaction bites. You know, it springtime equals reaction time. So playing around and figuring out what triggers the fish is what it's all about. I don't think it's necessarily about doing one thing the same. But I find that with a swim bait, fishing it as slow as possible while still getting the ideal action out of the bait does well, especially early in the pre-spawn. But with a lipless crankbait, I tend to fish it a little bit faster and higher in the water column. So it totally depends on the technique and at what point it is during the spring. But if you have a follow-up to that, let me know, man. Matt says, might want to try the Canoceros from Megabass. It's a magnum-sized lipless. I have the swimmer, but that floats, and it's 2.5 ounces. All right, so you guys are talking about Magnum lipless crankbaits. Yeah, I've got the Duo Realis Apex Vibe 100. I think they're both upstairs right now, but got that in a couple colors. Thing weighs like 1.25 ounces. It's a great lipless crankbait. Underrated, but I didn't put it on my list of favorites because I just don't fish it all that frequently. Now, if I had the smaller sizes of it, say if I were to do the same experiment as what I'm going to do with the Lucky Craft and Jackal baits with Duo Realis, because they make the Apex Vibe in smaller sizes. If I were to do that, then that bait might jump up the list for me real quick. I don't know. Lunch boxes. Okay. Adam says, how do you decide what colors and baits to put in a day box if you're going to an unknown body of water? Well, you got to take a couple things into consideration. One, what time of year is it? how unknown is it, right? Is it a lake or is it a pond? What kind of fish are in that body of water? In terms of just initial research, what do you know about it? How likely is it that it's got clearish water versus really dirty water? You can kind of assume some of these things, right? Um, if it's a grassy body of water, if they've got perch, if they've got trout in it, odds are it's going to be a little bit cleaner. If it's a small body of water and or a pond, you can assume it's a little bit more dirty water. So if it's perch, trout, shad as kind of the main sources of forage and it's clear water, you're going to go want to go with more clear and natural color patterns. If it's dirty water or bluegill as the main forage, you're going to want to go with bold colors or bluegill imitators. And that makes a big difference in terms of your starting point and what you're going to want to build those day boxes from. I don't know if Ryan's still in here, but if you are somehow, some way, hope you have a great rest of your night, man. Matt says just bring confidence colors and colors that you know would use for those types of water. Well, he said he doesn't know that type of water. So Bruce says, no idea why the hell I don't get alerts when you're live. It's really pissing me off. Well, dang it, Bruce. Maybe turn off those notifications and then turn them back on. Okay, yeah, you said you just unsubbed and resubbed. See what happens. Well, it's more about the notifications than it is about being subscribed. Make sure you turn on the notifications if they're not on, and maybe just turn them off and back on and click all notifications, because ordinarily I would post like a regular post. It's a text post letting you guys know maybe an hour or so before I go live, and then I go live, and you should get notifications for both of those actually. Bruce says the messed up thing is it's only for Tyler's channel. I wasn't getting alerts for. That is crazy, dude. That's super unfortunate. I'm sorry to hear that. Matt had the same issue. Now he looks out for my lives on Thursday and Saturday. Well, dang it, guys. I don't know why that happens. Okay, Abe is asking lipless. Let me go back. Abe was asking slow or fast, right? What speed do you reel at in the spring? Burn it or slow it down? So it depends on how deep of water I'm fishing, where I assume the fish are located. If it's early in the spring and I know fish are still hanging out deep, then I will use something like an LB500 or a Jackal TN70. I will fish it deep. I will bomb it out there and let it fall to bottom. Then I will more slowly pull it up off of bottom, let it sit. Reel up the slack. Pull it up off the bottom, reel up the slack as it's falling down the bottom, and kind of work it back, maybe halfway back to me before then I steadily swim it back to me lower in the water column. That's usually how I fish a trap early in the spring when the water is cold, and I know that fish are more likely to be out deep in relating to the bottom. As the water starts getting into the 40s, mid 40s, upper 40s, and I know that they're becoming more active, then I assume that a portion of those bass are moving and feeding up. They're not yet moving shallow and going to stay shallow, not until a little bit later when the water is truly in like the mid 50s, that they're going to get closer to doing some spawning type of activities. But when it's in the mid to high 40s, in the early 50s, that's when I will start fishing a lipless a little bit different. And I will start fishing it quicker in the middle or the higher portion of the water column. I will change up that presentation and mix in a faster retrieve with killing it and yo-yoing it in the middle of the water column, rarely fishing down bottom. Okay. Burning a lipless is not something I do all that often. I would say like a medium fast retrieve is usually about as fast as I will fish a lipless most of the time. Like, I'm not throwing an LV500 and just burning that thing in, trying to keep it 3 or 4 feet subsurface. Um, I'll throw a red eye shad in a half ounce and fish it about this quickly, knowing that it's staying about 2 to 3 feet under the surface of the water and just coming at a steady clip, but never really burning it. Matt, you might be right. I bet the guys that were wasting money buying those Excaliburs feel sick. You might be right about that. Um, yeah, and I I don't think that's probably happened with many baits before that, a discontinued bait was like highly sought after and then turns out it's the same bait as something that already exists and is not like considered the bee's knees. And so knowing that so many guys are gung ho about the booyah, um, or about the Excalibur makes you wonder, like, well, why not just stock up on the booyahs and just have a bunch of these in your arsenal, right? Really good lipless crankbait. Um, is it better than say the red eye shad? I don't know. In my opinion, no. I probably haven't fished it enough to really notice much of a difference between it and the two tap. Um, I just don't fish a lipless like day in and day out to know a lot of the subtle differences between baits that look and sound very similar. And those are two that are pretty dang similar. Matthew Scaldone, what's up, dude? How you doing tonight? Matt says all you have to do is search up the lake online, search a lake or use Google Maps, but you can find out a lot about a lake by just searching on Google. Yeah, I would agree with that. Um, it's important to do some research online ahead of time if you're going to an unknown body of water. I used to use FishBrain a lot because you might as well, right? You can find out what size fish people are catching. You can sometimes see pictures of the water in the background behind guys. You can see what types of baits and presentations they're using. But really, Matt's right that on hopping on Google Earth, um, and I say Google Earth, not Google Maps, because Google Earth, you can actually go back in time and you can see how the water level has changed. You can get a better view on the water with less reflection from the sun. And you can see just what the clarity of the water looks like most of the time. And you can get some clues on a body of water by looking there first. And that's always a good place to start. So that plus you just a Google search, your state will usually have some information on a given body of water about fishing regulations, um, what fish are in that body of water, and things like that. And so all of that stuff comes into play, but then you should be able to figure things out in like the first time that you get there in seeing what you're working with. So if you really don't know, even after all that I've said, I would just bring a little bit of everything. Like Matt was saying, I would bring your confidence baits to start out with. Um, and maybe just bring a little bit more in the way of soft plastics than hard baits, especially if you're fishing from the bank. And kind of figure out what you're dealing with. And then next time you come, you can kind of work that box around what you've learned. So, if you have no idea what you're dealing with, I'd bring a chatterbait, I'd bring a swim jig, I'd bring maybe a finesse jig, like some square bells, couple lipless crankbaits, and then a whole bunch of soft plastics. If it's early in the season, that's pretty much what I'd start out with. Bruce Nichols said I also made an IG account and followed you. Well, sweet man. A couple of you guys making IG accounts makes me feel a little bit more motivated to get back on Instagram and start posting on a regular basis. I've taken a couple months hiatus from there, um, just because I don't love the way that the algorithm has changed over the past 6 months or a year or so, and I don't have as good of a time on Instagram as I do on YouTube. I find myself really caring too much about numbers and caring about what people are saying. It feels a little bit more superficial than what we're doing here on YouTube. So I care a lot less about numbers, and I don't care about ad revenue here on YouTube. I just care about hanging out with you guys, having a good time, and about good vibes in general. So um, either way, though, I appreciate that, Bruce, and I will be back on Instagram, just hopefully with a little bit of a refreshed perspective and some new ideas. But we'll see about that. No problem, Abe. I hope that that helped a little bit, but you are welcome, dude. Bruce says I have to order a pinion gear and a few other parts. I finally caught a dink. Axle has a rub and ton of spool slop up and down. Axle rolls straight when it's out of the reel. Interesting. Adam says, I may have missed it earlier, but what are you drinking tonight? This is the same thing as last week. This is the Stellum single barrel rye. So I opened this with you guys like last Thursday. I ended up getting a little bit drunk after like 3 pours of this. It's a relatively strong, like 116 proof single barrel rye. Absolutely delicious. My brother gave it to me as a gift. He and his buddy that run their uh, bourbon podcast, I guess whiskey podcast, Beneath the Char. They picked out the barrel a couple months back, and we're selling it through a liquor store. I didn't even know about it, and then he gave me this bottle for my birthday, like not quite 2 weeks ago, and yeah. So cheers, man. I'm almost done with this glass, almost done with this live stream because I do need to dip out of here and at least hang out with my wife for a few minutes before she goes to bed. Matt says, I just use Instagram for personal blogging and just showing people new mail calls, stuff like that. But I'm going to do some lives while fishing. Um, yeah, well, go for it. I don't see why you shouldn't go live on YouTube instead of Instagram when technically there's more incentive to grow your YouTube than to grow your Instagram. But if you've got more personal relationships with people over Instagram and you relate more to those people, then by all means, doesn't matter. In fact, you might as well go live on Instagram. But yeah, Guggen Slayer says Instagram is no good anymore. Full of ads and thoughts now. Yeah, well, that's the thing is they're trying to bridge the gap between what they were before and what Facebook used to be and what now TikTok and YouTube shorts are, and just how that like short form video content is the deal now. That's what the that's what the algorithm is about. So I'm not totally surprised that that's the direction they've gone in. Bruce says I hate 99% of social media crap. I like Facebook Marketplace. LOL. Um, sure, I'm not big into Facebook Marketplace, but I can agree that 99% of social media crap is crap. I'm with you there. Adam says, tonight I'm having a Basil Hayden, and the wife has her bullet. Nice. Both good pours. Very, very nice. Cheers to you guys, and good for you on the solid pours. I like both of those quite a lot. Bullet was kind of like my old fashioned my go-to for a cheaper pour, something that was a little bit more mild but still delicious, and also a great mixer bourbon. Also a good rye. Bullet makes some good stuff. Although isn't it spelled Boulet like EIT? Matt says, I have some people on I know on here on Instagram think most of those guys would see it and like my stuff as well. Grammatically, that makes no sense. It sounds like I'm drunk just reading your comment, but I think I know what you're saying, and that's cool. Bruce says, I already got hit with the sloppy turd cutters on IG. What? All right. Well, guys, this has gone a little bit sideways in the last 5 to 10 minutes. And regardless, I'm going to finish this rye and dip out of here. Go say hi to my wife, maybe give her a little bit of a massage or a back scratch, and just get some quality time in before bedtime tonight. But I wanted to hop on, say hi to you guys since I won't be on tomorrow night or Saturday night, since I'm going to be up in the mountains for a little boys' weekend, playing some poker, doing some skiing. So, hope you guys enjoyed tonight's video, tonight's live stream, some of the conversation. It's been fun hanging out with you guys as always. And until next time, I'll see you laters. Peace, guys.